Perfect. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to Exiting the Injury Cycle Series, Load versus Capacity. I appreciate you taking the time out. And before we get started, I will take a brief moment to introduce myself. So I am Sarah Skedsvold. I am a functional fitness ambassador for Team Red, White, and Blue and a professional movement coach, specializing in corrective strength training. My practice, which is 9-4 Coaching, is based in Fargo, North Dakota, and I serve clients in person and remotely. So I'm also a retired Master Sergeant from the North Dakota Army National Guard, and that's my link into Team Red, White, and Blue. So the why, the how, and the for what. The why. Just with my coaching practice, I believe information should always be free. There should be no barriers to like good information for people who are searching for it. And everyone who is willing to work hard and become educated about their body and how it works deserves to be able to live fit, pain-free, active lives. But before we get started on the hows and the what, the for whats, does anybody have a burning question that they want to make sure gets addressed? I got a pen and a paper, and I am 100%, I want to catch those so that you don't have those questions kind of swimming around during the presentation. You can put them in the chat box, or you can feel free to unmute yourself at this time. All good? Cool. So the how. Exiting the Injury Cycle Series is designed to equip you with the knowledge to identify mindsets, habits, and legitimately physical imbalances that contribute to injury and may lead to chronic pain. We're going to do that with a 20-ish minute fully interactive presentation. It'll be followed by a Q&A session. And every one of my workshops is going to run that way for the next 4 weeks. I got the next 4 weeks lined out. Depending on what comes out of these workshops, I may broaden or deepen that series. And then the for what. By the time that we part ways today, you'll have a clear 30,000-foot view of your current situation and some tools and techniques you can put into place for free starting today to get rolling. So with that, we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation. Here's the outline. I use a lot of analogies. So this is the injury cycle, road to injury. I don't know how they quite overlap, but it made sense. It made sense in my ways. So the road to injury, how to get off that road, and smart work. Finally, some takeaways and Q&A. So the road to injury. Imagine, if you will, we are a stack of blocks. So this stack of blocks actually represents each of us individually as human beings. So anatomically in our body, well, actually, we'll talk about the graph first. So imagine that we're a stack of blocks on a graph. And that dotted line is your body's capacity to buffer injury. So any activity or anything that goes above that capacity line, that's where we start to feel pain, whether that's knees, hips, ankles, wrists, elbows, any or all of those things. That's where we start to feel pain. Anything below that capacity dotted line, that's stuff that our bodies can just buffer. And this is where we had talked about that, this is very transferable even to patience. Imagine that you have a capacity for patience, and then the one guy that cuts you off in traffic gets above that capacity, and then you completely lose your mind. We're going to show you how that's transferable with pain sensation. So wear and tear on our bodies, we all have this. As much as we would like to live clean, free, easy moving lives. We just have wear and tear. And these are things that like an asymmetry in like the bony structure of your hip, or like one femur longer than the other. These are things about our bodies that are routine wear and tear from being a human being. And also it may not even be able to be remedied. And if it could be remedied, you would need like invasive medical intervention. So this is just regular wear and tear that we just all have. The next block is sleep, diet, and stress. And if you've been in anywhere inside the fitness industry for any length of time, or just being a human being, sleep, diet, and stress 100% have an effect on our capacity to operate as human beings, right? So that goes into sleep quality, sleep quantity, and how the foods that we eat make us feel, high or low daily stress, whether that's like acute stress or chronic stress. I'm sure that you've just felt in times of, anybody that's like had deployments or injuries with sleep, diet, and stress, that it's definitely affects things outside of just the sleep, just the diet, and just the stress. So our next block is physical imbalances. Now, these are things that build up over time. So there's a strength dominance. So like push versus pull, left versus right, upper versus lower. Imbalances. So imagine like if you drive, like just normally driving, and you have like one arm. My left arm is always on the top of my steering wheel. Well, if we do this for, I've been driving for, 25 years. 25 years of this in 15-minute increments is going to it's going to create an imbalance. It's going to create, just like try to steer, like try to drive in a different position. Your body's just like it's just so used to like feeling the way that it feels when you just like normally drive. That is reflective of an imbalance. I'm sure as a yoga instructor, you see people left to right, push versus pull. I'm sure there's people who are like super good in downward dog, but are like super, like way tighter in a saddle position. So that is going to show strength dominance. Some muscles are more supple than other muscles, and that's generally because the way that we normally operate just creates this imbalance, right? Sports also create imbalances. It's very good at creating imbalances. And then limited ranges of motion too, like that all really contributes. So if you have a strength dominance, oftentimes that will show up in limited ranges of motion. So for example, I can get my arm to here, but if I arch my back, I can get it a little bit higher, right? Like that's where a limited range of motion creates, or this imbalance kind of creates some wonky movement. And then finally, when we get injured, the things we need and want to do, right? This is where we blow out our capacity. You have to go do the laundry, and you pick up that sock on the bathroom floor that isn't even yours, and you throw out your back, right? And you're like, oh, cool, it was that sock. I guess I'm never doing laundry again. It's in it. I come from a CrossFit background. Oftentimes you see somebody that comes in, they do one deadlift, and they're like, every time I do deadlifts, this happens, or I came in, I did deadlifts, and I blew out my back. It was probably, a whole list of things, and that's just the last thing that we do, right? There was a buildup of, like, there's a lot of things that ate up our capacity, and then the last thing we did, we attribute our entire injury to. Very similar to like when I talked about patience, right? Like there could have been a whole myriad of things that were leading up, and that one person cut you off in traffic, and you attribute all of your anger and rage to that one person, and it generally is never the case, right? It's this is like the death of 1,000 paper cuts, and the one that takes you out, it's never really the last thing, right? So, so this paints like an accurate picture, but it's not like a super inspiring picture. But we're going to change that. So the last deadlift didn't cause your low back pain. We just talked about that. Positively influence. We can positively influence the top three. The bottom one is going to be what it is. It like that's like just life. But the beauty of it is that we can positively influence sleep, diet, and stress, physical imbalances, and the things that we need and want to do. So what does that look like? Once I get my mouse back, there we go. What does change look like? Scheduled beds. These are literally just tactics, but this describes what positive change could look like, right? So scheduling a bedtime, morning routine, cleaning up your diet, self-regulation tools, that's a huge one. So attending, depending on the type of yoga, that is movement, but it can also be, you can also piggyback self-regulation on top of that, right? So that's a 2-for-1. That's a huge score. Physical imbalances, you can do a movement assessment. You can resolve those weaknesses. You can use corrective strength training like that. Those are all things that we can do. That's the part of my practice, my coaching practice that I specialize in, but it's not, the information is by no means proprietary. And if you have any questions on those, like where do I get that, like where do I get my information on that, I'm happy to share it. But that entire block is where my coaching practice is based in. And it's by no means proprietary. Like I said, it's an awareness and context for the most part. So activities of life, doing a training audit. If we have a lot of runners and all of a sudden they like deviate from their running, their like running program, and they hurt their hip, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm just going to run, right? I did something different. I hurt my hip. I'm never going to do anything different because I never get hurt running. I would question that, I guess. I would absolutely do a training audit on what kinds of things you're doing. Are you squatting a ton? Are you staying in one place for a ton? CrossFit has a really good, like, we basically just like suffer in one place. Are there things about your programming that could be more well-rounded? Like I said, if you're just a cyclist, if you're just a runner, I'm on the Peloton, so I'm on the bike a lot. I make sure to do various other things so that I can have a more well-rounded fitness level, so that I can be a little bit more resilient and durable. What's your goal? Honestly, changing what we do might not even be a thing, because you are legitimately preparing for some activity, some competition, some like I'm training for a Spartan race. I'm training for a football season. I'm training for a rugby season. If it's like a specific goal, then imbalances are just going to be inherently involved. And then we're like, okay, how do we look at sleep, diet, and stress? Like maybe we go hard on that so that we can like meet this short-term goal. And then looking at a return to sport plan. So someone does get injured. What does that return to sport look like? And sport doesn't have to be like full on, like doesn't have to be a softball team, right? Return to sport could be, how do I get back on the pickleball court? How do I get back in the yoga studio? How do I get back on the Peloton in a way that I don't re-injure myself, right? So that's what positive change can look like. And those are just a few examples. And the beauty of it is when we incorporate smart work, right? How we started and how it's going, right? So we've looked at our sleep, we've looked at diet, looked at stress, we've resolved some physical imbalances, and we're actually able to do the same amount of the things that we need and want to do in life, and it's under that capacity level. So ultimately, when you look at the things that we're doing, they all contribute to how we feel. Key takeaways. Injuries happen when we overreach our capacity in the moment. Sleep, diet, and stress have a huge impact on our capacity, and our capacity is fluid. So that's the biggest key, like the biggest takeaway, if you were to take anything away from this, is that capacity is fluid. So depending on how much sleep you get the night before, what your diet in the last few days has looked like, your capacity is going to be a little bit different. And injuries, and I use the term injuries kind of, sometimes you're going to tweak your back, my bad knee flares up or whatever. You're going to have those, and they're oftentimes going to happen. Like, those are the canaries in the coal mine. That's indicating to you that, hey, we're really bumping up against our capacity. So with that, it was fast and furious, but what questions do you have? If any, feel free to unmute yourself, and you can throw them in the chat box or unmute yourself. I'm happy to honestly take the rest of the time. And if you have questions that were spurred on from any of the previous slides, I'm happy to entertain all those questions.
I guess my first question is what is, I mean, I know I can go read the bio for the next series of classes, but because some of the questions I have may be answered in the next ones.
Okay.
But one of the reasons I know, because I said I'm a yoga instructor and I teach trauma-informed yoga, and I work with people who are amputees. Mm-hmm. So I'm working with people who have limited mobility, as we call it in my area. Mm-hmm. So I am familiar with adapting things for that, but like, those are the obvious injuries, like they walk in, or I know already in advance. And, obviously without trying to be intrusive to people, I always let them know that they can tell me if there's injuries in advance. But should we, in your experience, if you're leading a class, whether it's CrossFit or whatever, in a training session, would you, I don't want to say demand, but would you, in a physical sense, say, you have to let me know what your injuries are? You have to let me know what you're experiencing, even if it's, I woke up with my neck, I slept the wrong way last night, and today only my neck is feeling whatever, and then adjust the workout for that specific discomfort, physical discomfort. Or
what I've found, honestly, is that most people will not verbalize if they're feeling anything at all. And so what I've really tried to do, obviously creating a welcoming environment, is first and foremost, and having that time, like, I don't know what your yoga studio capacity is, but if you can engage with your athletes, prior to that session, just to build that rapport. They're still not going to tell you. I've had best friends in classes, and they will have something and they will not tell me about it. So the rapport is just, the rapport is honestly just to create that environment, so that when you see something on it, like, people are going to show you what they're feeling before they tell you what they're feeling. And that's, like, I found, emotionally, physically, and it's oftentimes because it's taken me 5 years to really tap in to verbalize what I'm feeling, right? To even like, we're like, especially as soldiers and veterans, we were just not like, there wasn't a lot of value in checking in with how we were feeling, because it wasn't about us anyways. And that's not a good or a bad thing. It's just, we don't have a lot of reps, right? It's like going into, I haven't done downward dog a bunch, so I'm not going to be good at it right away. So what I've found is that actually, so you're doing yoga poses, yoga positions. If you can pinpoint someone like tweaking or kind of modifying, or like, their hip kind of like, oh, you can see like a grimace on their face. And what I would go I would like go to them and be like, okay, for you, this is what I'm seeing, and this is what I would invite you to do. You're never going to be able to like make anybody if they're super in their head about I have to do exactly what the instructor's telling me. You're always going to see those people, but creating an environment where it's not a big deal. You can, if you can see that movement, and you're not going to catch them all, but if it's over time, right? You're just going to create that experience over time of like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to tell her because she's going to see it anyways. She's going to see that my hip's all jacked up and she's going to ask me to do this, whatever. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think I've been doing this long enough that I have been able to have conversations. It's just kind of my, I mean, obviously we know, as you mentioned, military, I can't get them to tell me if there's anything wrong anyway. But it's just kind of like if you're walking into a physical class, there's this expectation that you should tell.
Yeah.
But when I'm the teacher is different than when I'm going to a ruck and I can see people in physical pain, but I'm not the one leading the ruck. I'm not the one actually hosting the event and things like that. And I'm like, what is my responsibility is as somebody who understands that there is this capacity for injury and that we can, help tweak and stuff. And again, these are things that you may be addressing in the series to come. So I don't want to.
I would invite you to our fourth one is a movement assessment.
Yeah.
Make sure you prioritize that. That I'm actually going to run through the movement screening that I use.
Okay.
That's part of my my intake process with all my new clients.
Yeah.
And it's a joint by joint assessment. And what it'll do is it'll help them get some awareness. Like, all right, everybody, we're just gonna, like, especially for a ruck. All right, let's touch our, find a good spot, find some room, stand, like just a regular stance. Go ahead and reach down as far as you can, unload it. And if you got somebody that can like not touch the ground or like barely get to their knees, you're gonna be like, okay, well, we're gonna have a hard time today on this rock. And then you can kind of like, hey, maybe this should be a walk, maybe this should be whatever. But I know that there's such a drive to belong. It's where the custom strategy and structure and support, like I've tried to, and that's why I stepped away from CrossFit, is we can't fix individual problems in a group setting, but but my practice is designed to get people back, right? And so that just means that I haven't been able to like completely crack that nut inside a group setting. Is my answer to that question is literally like pulling some of their training outside of that group environment, which, depending on where they're at in their like belonging journey, it's super, super, super difficult. So it's a complex piece, but as long as you're creating that environment, we're making progress, and that's all we can ask. Cool.
Thank you very much. I'm actually going to jump off because I got to get on that other call, but I look forward to the email, and I am signed up for the remaining series, so I will be seeing you.
Awesome.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right. Were there any, Diana or Kara, any questions? I saw Kara, I saw your chat.
I didn't have any questions, but I'm really glad I jumped on. I was actually went onto the Team RWB app to check in for the summer streak, which is for running. I'm a runner.
Okay.
And I lift. And as soon as I saw the title, I thought, well, I overdo everything, so I should pay attention to this. So that's, I'm glad I checked in, and I'll see what your future talks are about, and probably check in as long as I can. Mondays are kind of crazy. I'm in California, I'm in LA.
Okay.
And so this is 9:30 in the morning. So basically I've come back from my run, just washed my hair, which is why it got 2 shades lighter while I was talking to you. But I was in the Army and I was a sports dietitian.
Okay.
And I was also a CSCS. And so my suggestion for people who, she's off the call now. I think her name was Janice. Was it Janice? She, she wanted to know what her responsibility was. And what I always try to do is look around and advocate for people.
Mhm.
And if I see someone who's limping a little bit, I'll say, I'm really sore from Tuesday and I feel like my hip's acting up. And I'll put it on myself, or
Yeah.
I'll refer back to maybe a prior class and I'll say, we had a lot of people who were complaining of hip injuries or lower back pain or whatever, so that people don't feel targeted, and
Mhm.
perhaps they'll speak up and say, hey, that's me too. I'm not the only one. So
Yeah, just normalizing, like normalizing that, the fact that like it's going to be super rare that in a group environment everybody has that same capacity for the moment, for the day, and the fact that like it doesn't define you, right? Like, so today if we take it easy, tomorrow you can go hard. But no, I really appreciate that. That's a really good tip.
yeah, but I really appreciate it. And anything having to do with movement, because it's not my forte, I appreciate that. And I've been analyzed a couple times by physical therapists, and I'm that person with the longer leg.
Okay.
And I know I stand, but I didn't find out until I was in my 50s.
Really?
So yeah, and that explains a lot. Wouldn't that have been helpful 40 years ago?
Why,
So
100%. How is that? So how is your, just, because no one has any questions and I'm interested. And if you have to run, then I understand. But like, how have you modified your training now that you're equipped with that information?
I had my gait analyzed. I actually went to the physical therapist and I went to UC San Francisco for a running analysis. And they told me I was kind of landing wrong. So I have to run a little bit different. I notice it when I'm lifting, because I do lift weights too. I always stand with my left leg forward and I try to correct it and I feel like I'm gonna fall over. And so I know I can't tell you which one is my longer leg, but I'm gonna say it's my left leg because I always stand with it forward. So they definitely showed me some corrections when I did a gait test, and they did a video, and when you can see it yourself,
Okay.
it makes a big difference. And it's nice to have an outsider who's a professional look at it, and look at it from different aspects. The physical therapist did a lot of like strength, flexibility, range of motion, all those sorts of things where you may think you've really got something handled, you're really strong, or you're a really good runner. And then you go to the next test and, I think it was 7 parts and you don't do that well. And maybe that's what's actually holding you back in your running. Maybe you can be a better runner if you
Yeah.
worked on your range of motion or you worked on your flexibility. So it's
Yeah.
good to have that really holistic view.
Well, if you liked that, then you'll absolutely like our next workshop. So next week is the athlete's hierarchy of needs, where we talk about flexibility, mobility, strength, balance, all of that, building that pyramid. But I'm really glad that you got a holistic view. I'm really glad to hear that you got the not only the strength, but you actually got the gait test. You actually got like your flexibility. You actually got your mobility. I think all of those are the more holistic view you can get with somebody to like provide some context. I mean, it's such a game changer.
It does. It changes the injuries and everything. I have runners who all they count on is the stopwatch and
Mhm.
either how far or how fast they ran. And I look at, how was my output? How was my VO2 max today? Why was it down so much? Was it the ambient temperature? Was it what I ate yesterday? I'm a dietitian, so I'm always thinking
Yeah.
about what I ate or drank. And I'm a sports dietitian, so I'm doing all the right things, but sometimes it doesn't work. So I definitely am a big picture person, and I have a running group with 800 people. So I have people show up and they're all different ranges from Boston qualifiers to walkers that want to be runners, and so you're trying to help everybody, and no one wants to admit to having any issues or flaws, but I try to make it really a safe place so you can.
Mhm.
And they're not all soldiers. It's easier if there's some civilians that are more forthcoming than soldiers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the even the load versus capacity, like that could be your willpower, right? Like that could be like, hey, we only like this is why we set ourselves up from a nutritional standpoint. We're fueling and training. We're not dieting and exercising. And in order to fuel, you have so many willpower points. And if you don't have, if you have the cookies in your house, that takes up like 80 points of willpower. Where if they're at the store, it takes 5, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
There's so
no,
much misinformation. I'm fighting that all the time. So, but I try to help people. And one thing I found, and they found this in psychotherapy, is they have some psychologists that run or walk with their patients. And when they're
Mhm.
next to a patient, you reveal a lot more than when you're face to face.
Mhm.
Just like if you have kids, you know that they talk to you when you're driving in the car. And if you came home and ask them how their day was, you get nothing.
Yep.
So I found that I call it running as therapy. And so many people, just open up and they're more receptive to change, which is really a good thing. And I'm
Yeah,
hoping I can bring my kids into your next session. It's during work, so I'll have to tell them, see if they can get the time off too.
yeah.
Because one is my son is in the Army Rangers and he works out a lot. And my daughter-in-law is physical therapy tech. And
Oh,
she
perfect.
and she's always counseling people and she's
Yep.
really good at it. But I think just always having another viewpoint is really, really good. So I really appreciate this, Sarah.
Oh my God, it's my absolute pleasure. And these are the concepts that are so, I just like the person, right? Like your son and your daughter-in-law, just them knowing it, they're going to be able to embody that, take that into, okay, this is what I understand. And they can embody that. Then all of a sudden they're affecting the people around them, just like you with your running group. Like we've had this like workshop and I've learned from you today, like totally, gotten points and from you. And that's how we all get better. It's being, healing ourselves, right, through activities and group and like being in an environment and belonging. And yeah, it's all
And most people want to be part of a team, which is why Team RWB is great, because when you leave the Army or whatever branch you were in, you've lost your team and you have to create a new team. And so my running group started out as a running group for vets, and there's fewer and fewer vets as time goes on, but there's people that support vets and we all wear red on Fridays. And, we do things, I try to make them feel like they're part of the veteran community, but
Mhm.
that's part of it, is you need that team and need that sharing. And if somebody paid me a lot of money to sit across the table from me and get my expert information, they'd go home and maybe do one thing. If they
Yeah.
run next to me a couple of times, they'll see, well, she's 63 years old and she's doing okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe I should listen to her. How can she run and talk?
Yep. And you can display, right? Experiential learning, right? It's not like you can't be like standard American diet and be running at 63 years old. Like that's just that. So you have showed this longevity of durability and resilience. Like you just embody that. And running, you're putting it on the line. And there are days, I'm sure, that you like don't feel great, and that's okay too, because it shows that you're a human being. It's like, oh, she's not this 63-year-old robot that just like plug in,
Yeah, because there are those marathoners. I'm not that person. I started running late, and today was a crappy day. Usually California is a little cooler and not humid, and today was humid. And I only had one person show up for my run. I said, hey, we're not going to do sprints today, if that's okay. And she was relieved. And I said, I'm just not feeling it. We're just going to go whatever pace we can go.
Yeah.
And if you want to go faster than me, that's fine. And she's used to not going faster than me. And I think it was a real boost to her hearing, hey, I'm okay if you leave me in the dust.
Mhm.
So we ended up running mostly together, but when I can see a finish line, I can always run faster.
Yep. That the horse can smell the barn. Is that's the,
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Nope,
Well, it was really
that's-
nice talking to you. And I'm
my
going
God.
to try to get my kids tuned in, see if they can get away from work. Look, there's Kara. Hi. She's so cute.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to be super respectful of your guys' time too. So Kara, I know you said you didn't have any particular questions, and I'm happy to stay on or jump off. All good? Okay, well, we will hopefully catch you next week. It'll be same time, same place. Have a fantastic week, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah.
You bet.
Bye, Kara.
Bye.